It is halftime, and you know what that means. It's time to rant. OU unbeaten no more, so we have plenty to rant about. Cade McFarland alongside Christy Maria. It is the rant brought to you by the Tulsa Oilers. Chris, the Oilers have had a very nice little homestand going on the road, I believe, this week, and then back home for a Friday game. Hey, what happened over the weekend?
So Kansas City came into town, and they left with a loss.
There you go.
The Oilers went out 3-0. Ended up winning 3-1. This team's good. I mean, they have a few games fewer than the top team right now in their division, and so they're only a couple points back. So if they win those couple games and make up for that, they're going to be in control of the division early in the season. They are looking good.
5-2 so far. It's been a great start.
Yep.
All right, the Oklahoma Sooners, as I said, unbeaten no more, falling to Baylor 27-14 after the field goal at the very end. Chris, I would say this is surprising. It's an upset loss technically, but really it's not. Like, it is if you were looking at this Sooners team and projecting what would happen in the future based on what's happened in prior years. Yeah. But if you simply looked at what has gone down this season, well, that team showed up in Waco and played the toughest team it's played so far and left with an L, and really that's not the least bit surprising.
Baylor's defense is good, and that is the first thing I think that you can point to when you look at this final scoreline,
for sure.
Especially when you look at the performance that this offense had for most of the game. Mind you, the Sooners had 7 points for most of the game. They got the final 7 in the fourth quarter when they were just trying to make a last-ditch push. The Baylor defense has figured out something that other teams had kind of gotten bits and pieces of throughout the season, and that is how to contain OU for a full 60 minutes. A lot of teams figured out how to contain them for the first half, kind of let them go in the second half, and the OU offense came through and pulled games out of the hat. But the Baylor defense figured out how to win by containing the OU offense for the first 60 minutes, and it just took a defense as good and as, I would say, disciplined as Baylor to figure out how to do it, how to keep Caleb Williams inside the pocket, not allow him to throw on the run, and keep him under pressure. Because that's the thing. Caleb Williams, when he was inside the pocket under pressure, he was not throwing strong, he was not throwing accurately, and he was not throwing confidently. When he's on the run and he's throwing, he looks great. But when he's in the pocket under pressure like Baylor had him, and they're getting whatever you want to call it, if you want to call it, just good defensive ends, if you want to call it coverage sacks. They were pressuring Caleb Williams within the pocket. It was a little bit of everything, and they were forcing him to make contested throws, and they were getting their way all day long in the backfield.
He was off. You know, for the most part this season, we have seen Caleb Williams really dialed in, but we knew when the step up in competition came in November, it was going to be a different thing, and he wasn't quite able or ready to answer the bell yesterday against a Baylor defense that is really good. You needed Spencer Rattler's accuracy and Caleb Williams' athleticism. Yeah. And you don't have that in the same guy at the moment. And so, he went to Rattler for a couple series, and that didn't work because he's simply not able to elude the rush, at least that was coming at that point. I think Lincoln Riley misfired on a number of things, did not hang in there with the run. And look, Dave Aranda had a really nice performance as LSU's defensive coordinator in the playoffs against OU a couple years ago. Now it's 2 years in a row with Baylor. But he didn't write the book on this.
No.
He copied it, in my mind, from the Iowa States of the world, who really do a lot more of the drop eight. And their point, what they're getting at is, Lincoln Riley, we know what you're all about. And we know that you have run the ball really well in your time at OU. But we also know you're an air raid guy at heart. And you want to get it over the top. You want to beat us throwing the ball. And we don't think you're disciplined enough with the running game to just keep handing it off. So that's what we're going to give you. Yeah. And he didn't. He didn't stick with the running game yesterday. I think he needed to. There needed to be more quarterback run game, more creative with the way you get Caleb out there. He kept taking deep shots. Caleb wasn't dialed in, wasn't feeling it, never got into a rhythm. And it's a lot what's going on in the NFL right now with the Kansas City Chiefs, where they look at Andy Reid and Pat Mahomes and say, look, we got to pick our poison. And so what we're going to do is try and take away the thing we know you love to beat people with. Why don't you beat us with this other thing? I think OU has to find a way to run the ball better and more consistently and be a little bit more hard-headed about it. This is an interesting stat that I unearthed yesterday. First 50 games for Lincoln Riley as head coach. His offense tallied 400 yards or more 48 times.
Wow.
48 out of 50. 96% of the time they go for 400 yards.
Yeah.
Fall out of bed and gain 400. Last 13 games, that's a full season of work. 6 times they failed to get to 400.
Wow.
6 out of 13 after 48 of 50. It is not just Baylor. It's not just Dave Aranda. A lot of people have figured out what you do is you play 3 safeties a lot. You drop 8. You keep them from beating you deep.
Yep.
And you make them beat you with what they think of as the secondary part of their offense.
Yep.
You know, I mean, this is still, even though they run more than they pass under Lincoln Riley, it is not a team that runs to set up the pass as much as it passes to set up the run, or at least that's what it is at its core. That's who Mike Leach is. That's where Lincoln Riley got this from. And so he's got some adjusting to do, I think, big picture-wise. Not just in lieu of what happened yesterday, but I think big picture-wise, Lincoln Riley has some adjusting to do. All right, I've already hit the amount of time that I allotted for OU, but we're just going to keep going because we got to talk about the end of the game, and we'll get to that video as we keep rolling it here. The Baptists stormed the field and then got off in an orderly fashion. And Aranda, because of tiebreaker rules, insisted on kicking the field goal. Lincoln Riley lost his mind. Joe Castiglione was none too pleased either. I mean, how about the scene at the end of the game, Chris?
It was incredible. I mean, I haven't seen anything like it. It was no Stanford Cal, but it was.
No, that's right.
The band wasn't on the field, but it was still kind of nuts.
Okay.
Yeah, it was still nuts. So I mean, look, I go back and forth to this. I love memeing teams. And I also can be a fan of tradition. And so I am very much a fan of sportsmanship. And when your fans storm the field and they put people in danger, I mean, there were guys that were getting mobbed, like OU guys that were getting mobbed because fans, whether they be disorderly or whatever you want to call it, were just mobbing them, chanting SEC and making fun of them. And then some of them were getting kind of rough and handsy.
You want as little of that interaction as possible.
Exactly. Your guys are in danger in your mind at that point. Their parents are watching. They're looking to you to say, how are you going to protect my child? I mean, you're a parent. I'm sure you can you can identify with that. Like you see your kids walking off the field and all these crazy fans are running on. I feel like you'd be like, yeah, well, Lincoln Riley, what are you going to do? So anyway, this is a crazy scene, and then Lincoln Riley's flipping out at the refs. No penalty, by the way. No 15-yard penalty. And then Baylor goes and says, you know what? Let's get a tiebreaker in here. Let's kick a field goal because OU just sent out 11 of their guys who now have to sprint the entire length of the field again to get back to safety after the game. That's ridiculous to me. That's unforgivable. I don't think that's very sporting at all. If we get to the end of the season and Baylor wins on that tiebreaker, hats off to them. I will never like the way they did it, though.
The counterpoint. One, every single one of you OU fans would be bragging about Lincoln Riley's big brain if this was reversed and he was the one insisting on kicking the last-second field goal for some tiebreaker that none of us even knew existed until yesterday. You would all be bragging about how he is so far ahead of the curve. So please, I don't need you being sanctimonious on Twitter.
Yeah.
Here's the thing. By the way, 10 years ago, I had a great video of Tony Jefferson, who was a Sooner safety and then went on to the NFL, squaring up with a Baylor kid because with Robert Griffin III, they beat OU for the first time ever. Kids rushed the field. And so that kind of stuff does happen, and I think the Big 12 refs did do a poor job. They should have just let OU. I don't know why they had to come back on the field. Why can't Baylor attempt the field goal with nobody there? Like, seriously, why does OU have to come back? To me, just leave them in the locker room. Like, I really don't get it. But you leave for the SEC only a few months ago, and you think the Big 12 is going to do you some favors this moment?
That's very
Joe
fair.
C., you think after leaving for the SEC and leaving this league in the financial situation you left them in, that you can, still swing that stick? Get out of here. Get out of here with that. That was weak. Just take your medicine. You played poorly. You deserve it. You deserve the field storming. You're OU. You're the king of this conference year after year after year. Deal with it. To me, it was a bad look. They were being babies. All right. Oklahoma State. There is nothing. Everything is good with regard to what's going on in Stillwater right now. They had a performance in OU, in Norman. They love to call it Championship November.
Yeah.
That was a Championship November performance from the Cowboys last night, just absolutely poleaxing TCU. And Chris, the defense continues to be amazing. They haven't had a bad game all year long, but how about the running game last night? This team is really starting to come in a lot of ways.
I mean, Warren gets over 100 yards and 3 touchdowns. Robinson comes in relief, gets 124 yards and 2 touchdowns. The run game is what, for me, has been missing. I mean, Spencer Sanders has obviously hit another level this year. He's more accurate. He's more confident in himself. And I think he has hit another level of maturity that has put his game on another level. But the run game is fantastic. The offensive line is solid. And now you're getting this incredible run game that is putting up 6-minute drives and finishing them off. Getting to the red zone, they are absolutely playing their best. Mind you, the defense is setting up great opportunities for this team because it's getting close games, and then you have 6-minute drives, and you can close a game out, and you can just put an opposing team in such an uncomfortable position because you're stifling them on defense, and then you come on offense and you're on the field for God knows how long, 6-7 minutes at a time, and you're finishing drives off. This team is playing at a way that they can beat literally anybody, because that, if you do those two things well and you make opposing teams uncomfortable, I don't care who they are, I'm going to throw it out. I don't care if you're Alabama. If you can stifle Alabama and make them uncomfortable, and you can come out on offense and you can have success in the run game and make their offense feel like it needs to do something great to keep them in the game, you can beat literally anybody. And I think that's what OSU is doing right now. Are they going to get the love to have the chance to play Alabama or Georgia or Michigan State or whoever at the end of the year? It won't be Michigan State.
Ohio State, yeah.
Ohio State. Will they get the chance to do that? Maybe not. Probably not. They don't have the pedigree for it. But if they had the opportunity, the way they're playing right now, I think they could do it.
Look, I put Alabama and Georgia in just a different category. Like, I don't compare them to any of our teams. They're just kind of on a different planet in terms of raw material and what they have on hand. I think right now Oklahoma State is playing like a playoff team.
Yeah.
One of the kind that makes it in is the third or fourth team. Like, I think they are playing. You take Alabama and Georgia and put them on the side, and Oklahoma State's playing as well as just about anybody else that's out there. Maybe you can put Ohio State in that top group as well. But if you're talking about who's contending for that fourth spot right now, I think Oklahoma State is in there with anybody and everybody. I go back to the Tulsa game.
Yeah.
The offense struggled against Missouri State, and then it struggled again against Tulsa. And Mike Gundy stood at the podium and said, look, I'm going to get this fixed. All right? We're going to go back to the drawing board and figure something out. And they came out against Boise State with an incredibly run-heavy attack and did just enough. And they just kept cobbling it together and finding answers. And now you're seeing this boulder going downhill, and they're picking up some momentum. And it's an offense that's playing some really complimentary football. You know, no question, they would love to play Iowa State at Ames next week as opposed to a few weeks ago because I think Oklahoma State is that much better even just a few weeks later. They're the best team in the Big 12 right now. Can they sweep OU? Can they beat them back-to-back and win twice to make it into the playoff? That is a tall order. I'm not going to say it's not, and we know, I mean, you see ghosts if you're an OSU fan.
Yeah, absolutely.
When it comes to that rivalry.
Yeah.
But as we sit here now, and I know a lot of crazy things happen in that game and happen in college football generally, but I would be surprised if this OSU defense isn't stuffing OU's offense in its locker repeatedly 2 weeks from now and still. And that doesn't mean that OU can't find a way to win because this OSU offense is not a sure thing just yet, but it's showing glimpses of maybe where it can go. And I think that if you're talking about who is the fourth best team in America right now, Oklahoma State is absolutely in that conversation. I'm a huge Notre Dame fan. I would love nothing more than to see my beloved Irish make the playoff again. But Oklahoma State's playing better than Notre Dame. I think Oklahoma State's playing better than probably Michigan and certainly Michigan State.
And Cincinnati.
Alabama, Georgia, Ohio State. Right, and Cincinnati. I think they're playing better than Cincinnati, no question. Oklahoma State is at that level. Get used to it, Cowboy fans, and start sticking your chest out, right? Bedlam's coming. I know you've only won 2 of the last 15. And 17 and more than 100 years. Like, I get it.
Like, don't start bracing.
But this is the team.
Better. This is the team that can do it. If there's a team that can do it,
they should be stuffing OU in their locker 2 weeks from now.
And one last thing that we didn't quite get to with OU, but I think it.
Of course, it's troubling on the rant.
I think it pertains well to this conversation. OU's offensive line was not bad in that game. Against Baylor.
Yesterday?
I didn't think they were terrible.
At all.
I thought at moments they shined. In the first half, they actually were holding the Baylor defensive line to like 2 or 3 seconds that Caleb Williams had.
He did have time.
They were coverage. They were mostly coverage sacks in the first half.
They were dropping 8 a lot.
Yeah.
He had time, but they cover well.
They didn't look terrible.
You know, that's the
second half.
That's the thing with pressure. We often, put it all on either the offensive line or defensive line. Yeah. It's a combination, and coverage matters.
Really is.
I thought, and especially in the running game, I thought the offensive line. In fact, I think if you're talking big picture, what's wrong with OU right now? the offensive line you would just put into the category of good.
Yeah.
And in the
Yeah, that's
past,
fair.
what we've seen from OU is much, much better than that. And these guys are talented, like they were all highly recruited. But I don't think they're playing at that level, and that has a lot to do with, I think, what we've seen in terms of quarterback struggles from Spencer Rattler for most of the season, and then Caleb Williams yesterday.
So
All right,
as it pertains to that, the point I was making was that OSU's defensive line can run circles around Baylor's defensive line to me. And Baylor's defensive line went out and had their way with OU's offensive line. That's why I think OSU can have a serious shot at this, because their defensive line can rush 3 and still get even more pressure than Baylor got.
OSU is good at every level, and that's where they get you. The defensive line is dominant at times, but when they're not, somebody else picks them up. And look, you could go on and on about what makes the Oklahoma State defense great. All right, we will make this really quick with Tulsa. You watch this thing.
Yes.
By the way, the production on ESPNU for this broadcast,
insulting.
Were college kids putting this? I mean, look, is this even HD video? This looked awful.
We put better production together at Syracuse than this. I will say that.
I would hope so.
We used to do live games at Syracuse.
The premier.
We could white balance, you know. Goodness gracious.
Yes. All right. So Tulsa was dominating this game early and went to the half with a 13-3 lead, and then it just became the most Tulsa football game you've ever seen. And I mean, 3 interceptions and 6 throws for Davis Brin.
Yes.
Was it twice Tulane got an onside kick, or just once?
Just once.
Just once.
Yeah.
But it ends up resulting in, at the very end, Tulane had a
might as
field
well
goal.
have been an onside kick.
It was 13-3 with less than 3 minutes to go.
Yes.
And Tulane finally scores its first touchdown of the game on a long pass.
Yeah,
and then somehow they have a chance to win this game at the end of regulation. And
Davis Brin throws an interception. Tulane gets it to basically the 25-yard line, gets it back. All is lost. They run a couple more plays, 8 seconds to go, spike it. They're like, all right, 3rd and 7, 8 seconds to go. We don't have any timeouts. Let's kick it. You've seen me make the field goal that Tulane attempted. It was a short chip shot field goal, and by the grace of TU's luck and magic,
it's just Tulsa
they
football,
missed
people.
it. And we go to overtime, and TU's defense was fantastic this game. This is a Tulane team that embarrassed OU's defense at the beginning of the season, and TU's defense looked fantastic. Davis Brin just handed them so many short fields, they had to do something with it.
Shamari Brooks fumbling in the red zone.
Yep.
If it's not one thing, or it's another. Was it 4 turnovers all in the second half? I mean,
yeah.
You can't do that and win. They did win, and
They did.
hats off for that. They keep bowl eligibility alive. I want to say Jackson Player was fantastic. You see him in the middle there.
Yep.
When Jackson Player's in the lineup, remember he sat out the first half against Houston. When Jackson Player's in the lineup, he gives them a chance against absolutely everybody. Nobody scores more than 4 touchdowns on this TU defense with Jackson Player in the lineup. That gives you a chance each and every Saturday. But this isn't good enough.
No.
It's not good enough. And there are a lot of reasons for it, and we've gone over them in the past, and we'll have opportunity to go over them in the future. But even in a win, you just got to be more buttoned up than this. I don't know what to say other than that. All right, quickly, let's go through what was just a bananas Big 12 day. The 62-yard kick by Texas Tech to beat Iowa State. Tech had a huge lead, and then Iowa State comes all the way back. And now we've got this young fella for Texas Tech. Big for a kicker, funny number for a kicker, and this is going to go from 62. For years, the NFL record, like decades, the NFL record was 63 yards. And my man wearing a fullback number boots a 62-yarder, and Texas Tech beats Iowa State.
Got the club on his right hand, too.
And then when you're talking about and there's Matt Campbell, not happy. And when you're talking about just wackiness on a college football Saturday or in the Big 12, the creme de la creme is Kansas beating Texas. What are we talking about?
This is insane.
Texas is not back. Steve Sarkisian may not be the answer. They're still partying in Lubbock. And this was a game where Kansas went ahead big. I know it was 49-35 in the 4th, and then Texas was able to rally and force overtime, and then Kansas goes for 2 and wins this thing.
The pick 6 right here. Here it is.
And so Casey Thompson, Oklahoma native, and there's the pick 6. And so congratulations to those kids at Kansas. Texas is still not back. College football is back, and it is fantastic. And there is nothing better than being able to sit back or be at a game in Stillwater and follow on your phone one way or another. Oh, that was actually Card who got picked there. And follow the madness of a college football Saturday, and then get to come back here and chop it up on Sunday.
One thing for OU fans that I will give them at the end of this, Texas has lost 5 straight games for the first time since 1956.
That feels good.
That, you know what?
Feels good. We hit 20 minutes. The goal was 15. We always do exactly 20, and that's what we did. The Oilers are back home Friday. That's Christy Marie. I'm Cade McFarland. This was The Rant. Enjoy the rest of the game, everybody. 20 minutes, 14 seconds. TJ, there it is.